I still remember the first time I heard the name NOX-9. Every cadet at Earth's military academy knew the stories. Entire expeditions had vanished there without leaving survivors. Some transmitted desperate distress calls before silence swallowed them. Others simply disappeared, as if the planet itself erased every trace of their existence. I dismissed those tales as military legends designed to keep recruits humble. Then I stood inside the Galactic Council Nexus. The station was unlike anything humanity had ever built. Hundreds of alien civilizations filled the vast chamber, their delegates debating beneath a ceiling that displayed a living map of the galaxy. I walked quietly behind Admiral Catherine Hayes, careful not to attract attention. Humans were still newcomers among races that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. When the High Chancellor activated the emergency session, a single crimson marker appeared on the holographic map. NOX-9. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the oldest species stopped speaking. That was the moment I realized the stories weren't myths. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations were afraid of one planet. The crimson marker hovered above the center of the chamber, bathing every delegate in an uneasy red glow. No one spoke. Moments earlier the hall had echoed with arguments over trade routes, border disputes, and military budgets. Now the silence was so complete that I could hear the faint hum of the translation systems hidden beneath the polished floor. High Chancellor Sarakel raised one slender hand, and a series of holographic recordings appeared around him. 6 expeditions have entered the exclusion zone surrounding NOX-9 during the last 14 standard cycles, he said calmly. None have returned. The first recording flickered to life. An exploration vessel drifted above a green world wrapped in thick cloud cover. The crew sounded confident as they prepared to descend. Their voices were filled with excitement at the possibility of making history. The recording ended with static. The second was worse. A military shuttle raced through violent storms while alarms screamed across the cockpit. Someone shouted that the forest itself was moving. Another voice ordered an emergency ascent before the transmission dissolved into violent interference. The third lasted only 12 seconds. A scientist whispered, "It's watching us." Then nothing. No explosion. No final scream. Just silence. I glanced around the council chamber. Ancient species that had survived wars lasting centuries watched the recordings without moving. Some had no visible expressions, yet even I could sense their discomfort. NOX-9 has resisted every attempt at classification, Sarakel continued. Its ecosystems change without warning. Automated probes vanish. Orbital scans contradict one another. Surface mapping never remains accurate for more than a few hours. A massive reptilian delegate slowly rose from his seat. The Dravok Empire proposes permanent quarantine, he declared. Seal the system. Destroy any unauthorized vessel attempting to enter. Nothing of value exists on that world. Several delegates immediately signaled their approval. Others objected. If we abandon investigation, an insectoid representative replied, we surrender knowledge to fear. Another voice answered from across the chamber. We have already surrendered thousands of lives. The debate grew louder with every passing minute. Military commanders demanded orbital bombardment. Scientists argued for additional research. Diplomats insisted the mystery could still be solved peacefully. No one volunteered to go there. I remained silent beside Admiral Hayes, watching races far older than humanity struggle to reach a decision. Every proposal ended the same way. Someone would ask who was willing to lead the next expedition. Every time, the chamber fell quiet again. That frightened me more than the recordings. The galaxy possessed fleets capable of conquering entire star systems, yet not a single civilization was willing to place one boot on the surface of NOX-9. For the first time since arriving at the Council, I stopped wondering what kind of world NOX-9 was. I began wondering what kind of world could make the entire galaxy afraid to even try. The arguments continued for nearly an hour, circling the same impossible question without moving any closer to an answer. Every civilization present possessed technologies humanity could only dream of. They had weapons capable of cracking moons, fleets that stretched across sectors, and scientific archives older than recorded human history. Yet every solution they proposed depended on someone else taking the first step. No one wanted to become the seventh expedition to disappear into the forests of NOx-9. I watched the delegates carefully instead of the speakers. The more they discussed the planet, the more nervous they became. Even species famous for their emotional discipline betrayed subtle signs of discomfort. A crystalline ambassador dimmed until he was almost transparent. The four-eyed Karun admiral repeatedly tightened his upper hands around the arms of his chair. An elder from the aquatic Valori kept glancing toward the emergency exits, as though expecting the planet itself to somehow enter the chamber. Then the subject shifted. A silver sphere floated into the center of the room, projecting another series of images. This time they were not distress recordings. Cargo manifests, mining permits, financial transfers. The Chancellor's expression hardened. During our investigation, he announced, Galactic Intelligence intercepted irregular commercial activity near the exclusion zone. A familiar corporate emblem appeared above the chamber. NovaCore Industries. The name drew immediate murmurs. NovaCore was everywhere. They manufactured exploration vessels, medical equipment, terraforming systems, even military hardware. Their influence reached nearly every civilized world. They were wealthy enough to fund governments and powerful enough to influence council policy. The Chancellor expanded the projection. Several transport ships registered to NovaCore had entered neighboring systems without filing the required reports. Officially, they were conducting geological surveys. Unofficially, no one knew. The corporation denies operating inside the quarantine zone, Sarakel continued. However, encrypted transmissions recovered from abandoned relay stations suggest otherwise. A fragment of audio echoed through the chamber. Specimens secured. Static. Acceptable casualty rate. More interference. Continue harvesting. The recording ended abruptly. A wave of uneasy whispers spread across the delegates. One senator rose immediately. Those transmissions prove nothing. Another disagreed. They prove enough to justify a full investigation. And who, someone asked from the upper gallery, is willing to conduct it? Silence returned. Again, the pattern had become painfully familiar. Everyone wanted answers. No one wanted to be the one searching for them. I looked toward Admiral Hayes, expecting some reaction, but her expression never changed. She simply watched the debate with folded hands, saying nothing. It struck me that Earth hadn't spoken once since the session began. We were the youngest civilization in the room. Apparently, no one expected us to. Earth's delegation occupied one of the smallest platforms in the chamber, tucked near the outer ring where newly admitted civilizations traditionally sat. It was not considered an insult. Respect inside the Galactic Council was measured by age, influence, and contribution. Humanity possessed little of any. We had crossed the threshold into interstellar society only a generation earlier, and compared to the ancient powers surrounding us, our history among the stars amounted to little more than a footnote. That reality did not bother Admiral Catherine Hayes. She sat perfectly still while representatives from civilizations thousands of years older argued across the hall. Her hands rested calmly on the polished armrests, her expression unreadable, as if she were attending a lecture instead of witnessing one of the most important emergency sessions in recent history. I stood 2 steps behind her, exactly where protocol required. From there I could observe everyone without becoming part of the discussion. The younger member species have remained unusually silent, remarked a delegate from the Karun Collective. 4 amber eyes settled briefly on our section before drifting away again. Perhaps they possess a perspective we have overlooked. A ripple of polite amusement spread through the chamber. The comment wasn't cruel. It was dismissive. There was a difference. An elder from the Valori Confederation inclined his head toward us. Humanity has courage, he said. No one questions that, but courage is not experience. Nox 9 has already consumed explorers from civilizations older than their entire recorded history. Several delegates nodded in agreement. Another representative added, their military has never encountered a true galactic deathworld. Their officers cannot be expected to advise us on matters beyond their experience. Again, no hostility, only certainty. From their perspective, the assessment was completely reasonable. Humanity had fought wars on Earth. These civilizations had survived wars between stars. One of the senior admirals turned slightly toward Admiral Hayes. With respect, Admiral, your delegation is welcome to observe these proceedings. This discussion concerns threats requiring greater institutional memory. For the first time since the session began, every eye in the chamber drifted toward us. Admiral Hayes simply inclined her head. We are content to observe. Nothing more. No protest. No wounded pride. Just 4 quiet words. The attention moved elsewhere almost immediately. Beside me, I remained invisible once again. Exactly as a cadet should be. I wasn't offended by the way they viewed us. If anything, I understood it. Had our positions been reversed, I might have reached the same conclusion. We were newcomers surrounded by civilizations that had spent millennia exploring the galaxy. What experience could I possibly offer them? I was 23 years old, a military cadet, the youngest member of Earth's delegation. No one knew my name. No one expected me to speak. At that moment, I expected exactly the same. The debate continued to spiral in circles. Every proposal generated 3 objections. Every objection produced another committee, and every committee eventually returned to the same unavoidable conclusion. Someone had to go to NOx 9. Satellites could no longer be trusted. Long-range scans contradicted one another. Automated probes vanished before transmitting useful data. Whatever answers the Council sought were waiting on the planet itself. No one volunteered. I shifted my weight slightly, careful not to make a sound. Cadets were expected to remain invisible during council sessions, and I intended to honor that expectation. My job was to observe, learn, and leave the speaking to officers who had earned the right through decades of service. Then Chancellor Sarakel asked a question that silenced the chamber once again. If not another expedition, he said, then what? No one answered. Rows of delegates exchanged uncertain glances. The galaxy's oldest military commanders suddenly seemed far less confident than they had only minutes earlier. It wasn't fear of admitting weakness. It was something worse. They had exhausted every idea they possessed. I found myself staring at the rotating image of NOx 9 suspended above the chamber. The world looked almost peaceful from orbit. Vast green continents stretched beneath oceans of silver blue, while dense cloud systems concealed most of the surface. It was beautiful. Beautiful things could still be dangerous. Back at the academy, one of my survival instructors had repeated the same lesson until every cadet could recite it from memory. Nature doesn't hate you. It doesn't care whether you live or die. The moment you believe you are stronger than your environment is the moment it buries you. At the time, he'd been talking about mountain survival on Earth. Looking at NOx 9, I wondered if the same rule applied on a planetary scale. The delegates kept arguing about defeating the world, containing it, studying it, exploiting it, conquering it. Every proposal assumed NOx 9 was an enemy that could eventually be overcome with enough technology or enough firepower. The thought bothered me, not because I believed they were wrong, because I wasn't sure they were asking the right question. Without realizing it, I leaned forward slightly. If we truly want to understand a deathworld, my own voice sounded far louder than I intended. The chamber froze. Hundreds of heads turned toward Earth's delegation. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't meant to interrupt. Admiral Hayes slowly looked back at me. She didn't speak. She didn't stop me. She simply waited. I swallowed once before continuing. Then maybe we should stop trying to conquer it. The silence deepened until it became almost unbearable. And learn how to survive alongside it. The words echoed across the chamber. Then they were gone. For several long seconds, no one said anything. I suddenly became very aware that every representative in the Galactic Council was staring directly at me. The silence that followed my words felt heavier than gravity. For a heartbeat, I wondered if the universal translators had failed. Then I realized they hadn't. Every delegate had understood me perfectly. The first sound came from somewhere high in the chamber. A quiet chuckle. Another followed. Then another. Within seconds, laughter spread through the council like ripples across still water. It wasn't cruel or malicious. It was the kind of polite amusement reserved for an earnest student who had confidently offered a simple answer to a problem that had defeated generations of experts. The Karun Admiral smiled, his 4 eyes narrowing with patient sympathy. A thoughtful sentiment, he said. Idealistic, but thoughtful. An elder of the Valori inclined his head toward me. Young human, survival is precisely what every expedition attempted. They failed. A crystalline delegate allowed his body to shimmer with pale blue light. You speak as though coexistence were merely a matter of attitude. If only nature were so accommodating. Soft laughter followed. I felt heat creeping into my face, but I forced myself to remain standing. I didn't mean. A representative from the Dravok Empire raised one massive hand. There is no shame in optimism, cadet. Every civilization believes it understands danger before it encounters its first true Deathworld. Several delegates nodded. One elderly scientist adjusted the lenses covering all 6 of his eyes before speaking. Do you know how long the average survival time is for an unarmored organic life form on NOx-9? I shook my head. 3 hours. Another scientist corrected him. 2 hours and 46 minutes under current atmospheric conditions. The chamber murmured in agreement. A military commander folded his arms. Even our elite survival specialists require armored environmental suits, autonomous drones, orbital support, and continuous extraction coverage. He studied me for a moment. You are suggesting that one should simply survive alongside the ecosystem. Yes, I answered quietly. He gave a slow, almost fatherly smile. That is a philosophy. It is not a survival strategy. More restrained laughter drifted through the chamber. None of them were trying to embarrass me. That somehow made it worse. From their perspective, I was a young cadet speaking beyond his experience. They weren't insulting me. They were indulging me. One delegate leaned toward another, his translator failing to suppress a trace of amusement. The humans truly are fearless. Or wonderfully naive. A few nearby representatives quietly agreed. Another voice spoke from across the hall. If the cadet believes coexistence is possible, perhaps we should invite him to spend an afternoon on NOx-9. That drew the loudest laughter yet. Even a few military officers smiled. I looked toward Admiral Hayes, expecting disappointment. Instead, she remained completely expressionless. Her eyes met mine for only an instant. There was no embarrassment, no apology, only the smallest nod. I couldn't tell whether she approved of what I said, or simply wanted me to remember everything that happened next. VidIQ. The session finally adjourned without a decision. No expedition was approved. No military operation was authorized. The investigation into NovaCore Industries was postponed until more evidence could be gathered, though no one could explain where that evidence would come from if nobody was willing to set foot on NOx-9. Delegates left the chamber in small groups, continuing their debates in quieter voices as they disappeared into the endless corridors of the Council Nexus. I remained where I was until Admiral Hayes stood. Walk with me, cadet. Yes, ma'am. We crossed one of the Nexus's elevated transit bridges in silence. Below us, hundreds of ships drifted through organized traffic lanes while transports carried diplomats between districts. The station seemed alive, its crystal supports glowing softly against the darkness of space. After several minutes, Admiral Hayes finally spoke. You embarrassed yourself today. I looked down. I know. No. Her answer caught me off guard. You embarrassed the council. I frowned. I don't understand. They laughed because they believed your idea came from ignorance. She stopped beside a panoramic viewport overlooking the stars. They never considered the possibility that you were asking a question they had forgotten how to ask. I stared at the reflection of Earth's uniform in the glass. I wasn't trying to challenge anyone. I know. She folded her hands behind her back. Do you know why humanity survives on Earth? I thought about it. Because we adapt. She nodded once. Exactly. We don't conquer hurricanes. We prepare for them. We don't defeat oceans. We learn to sail. We don't declare war on winter. We survive it. Her eyes drifted toward the distant stars. Every civilization here grew powerful enough to bend nature to its will. We never had that luxury. Earth taught us something long before we reached the stars. If your environment is stronger than you, respect it. Her words echoed the lessons I heard throughout my years at the academy. Not domination, preparation, not victory, survival. Before I could reply, a secure communication chimed from the Admiral's wrist console. She accepted the transmission without hesitation. Only audio came through. Admiral Hayes, this is General Marcus Dalton. His voice was calm but unusually serious. The council session is over? It is. A brief pause followed. Then initiate phase horizon. My pulse quickened. Phase horizon? I had never heard those words before. Admiral Hayes didn't ask for clarification. She simply answered, understood. The transmission ended. I looked at her. What is phase horizon? She regarded me for a long moment before speaking. Your final survival evaluation. I blinked. My what? You return to Earth immediately. The Academy has moved your graduation exercise forward. I managed a nervous smile. I thought I'd have another month to prepare. So did everyone else. She started walking again. Apparently, the schedule has changed. Neither of us noticed the shadow passing silently outside the viewport. A sleek black transport bearing the discreet emblem of NovaCore Industries slipped away from the Council Nexus, its encrypted transmission already racing toward a destination hidden deep within the forbidden system of NOx-9. Earth looked strangely ordinary after standing inside the Galactic Council Nexus. The orbital elevators still climbed into the sky above the Atlantic. Freight carriers crossed the atmosphere in steady streams, and the Academy grounds stretched across the Colorado mountains exactly as I remembered them. It was hard to believe that, only 2 days earlier, I'd been surrounded by civilizations thousands of years older than my own. Now I was back where everything made sense. At least, I thought I was. Fort Horizon Military Academy sat high above the tree line, carved directly into the granite cliffs. It wasn't the largest training facility on Earth, but it had earned a reputation for producing survival specialists capable of operating almost anywhere humanity had settled. Every cadet who graduated from Fort Horizon carried the same lesson into the fleet. Technology fails. Training remains. I barely had time to unpack before the recall alarm echoed across the barracks. All fourth-year cadets report immediately to Assembly Hall 1. The announcement repeated 3 times. Within minutes, nearly 200 cadets stood in perfect formation beneath the Academy's enormous steel insignia. Faces I had trained beside for 4 years filled the hall. Some looked excited, others looked nervous. Everyone knew this could only mean one thing. Final evaluation. General Marcus Dalton stepped onto the platform without ceremony. He was a broad-shouldered man whose gray hair contrasted sharply with the fresh scars running across one side of his face. Rumor claimed he survived more hostile worlds than anyone currently serving in Earth's defense forces. Looking at him, I believed every word. They completed every academic requirement, he began. They mastered survival theory, combat medicine, navigation, logistics, and field engineering. His voice remained calm. Now you'll discover whether any of it matters. A holographic map appeared behind him. Several familiar planets rotated above the stage. Arctic colonies, desert moons, jungle worlds, volcanic mining stations, standard survival environments. Then another world appeared. Its surface was hidden beneath endless green cloud cover. No label accompanied it. General Dalton deactivated the image before anyone could ask questions. This year's examination will differ from previous classes. Quiet murmurs spread through the cadets. The exercise will be conducted individually. No rescue teams. No direct supervision. No outside assistance. You will rely entirely on your own judgment. Someone raised a hand. Sir, what environment are we deploying into? Dalton smiled faintly. The one assigned to you. Another cadet frowned. So we won, no until launch? Correct. The hall fell silent again. I exchanged a quick glance with my closest friend, Ethan Brooks. He shrugged. Guess they really want to surprise us. Maybe. Something about the general's expression kept bothering me. He wasn't excited. He wasn't trying to motivate us. He looked concerned, as if the examination had become something more than a graduation exercise. When the briefing ended, each cadet received a sealed assignment packet. Mine contained only 3 items: a deployment time, a launch bay number, and one sentence: record everything you see. The next 48 hours disappeared in a blur of preparation. Fort Horizon transformed overnight. Maintenance crews worked around the clock. Technicians rushed between hangars, and instructors who normally barked orders now spoke in quiet, measured voices. It was as if the entire base understood that this final examination carried a weight none of us could explain. I checked my equipment for the 3rd time that morning. Combat uniform, survival pack, medical kit, multi-tool, emergency beacon. Everything was exactly where it belonged. Still, something felt different. The sealed packet I had received after the briefing contained one final instruction. Report alone to Hangar 12 at 0600. When I arrived, General Dalton was already waiting beside a single drop pod. No audience, no formation of cadets, no speeches, just the general and 3 technicians finishing their inspections. Cadet Reed, sir. He studied me for several seconds before speaking. Every class believes the final examination is about proving how much they learned. He shook his head slightly. It isn't. What is it about, sir? Discovering what you do when everything you learned isn't enough. Those words settled heavily in my mind. One of the technicians approached carrying 2 sealed cases. Additional mission equipment. He opened the first. Inside rested a compact reconnaissance drone no larger than my forearm. 4 silent rotors folded neatly against its body, while a cluster of advanced sensors occupied its nose. This unit operates independently, the technician explained. Thermal imaging, terrain mapping, atmospheric analysis, autonomous return capability. He handed it to me. It may become your most valuable companion. The second case contained a reinforced helmet fitted with an unfamiliar camera system. I raised an eyebrow. I thought our standard helmets already recorded missions. They do, General Dalton answered. This one doesn't, just record. It broadcasts to encrypted storage in real time whenever communication is available. I looked at him. You expect us to document the exercise? We expect you to document everything. He emphasized the final word. Plants, animals, weather, every decision you make. If something surprises you, record it. Another instructor stepped forward carrying several high-capacity data modules. If you fail, she said calmly, someone else may eventually attempt the same mission. Your recordings could save their life. I nodded. I understand. No. General Dalton met my eyes. You don't. His expression hardened. Information survives longer than soldiers. If you can only bring one thing home. He tapped the camera mounted on my helmet. Make it the truth. For reasons I couldn't explain. Those words unsettled me more than the mission itself. As I secured the drone inside my pack, I noticed technicians working around my drop pod. They spoke in whispers, occasionally connecting encrypted terminals to its guidance computer before quickly disconnecting them whenever someone approached. I assumed they were running final diagnostics. I never imagined someone was quietly rewriting my destination. By the time the launch countdown began, my course no longer matched anyone else's. The countdown echoed through the launch bay with mechanical precision. 30 seconds. I climbed into the drop pod and locked my harness into place. The cockpit was barely large enough for one person, surrounded by instrument panels and reinforced armor designed to survive atmospheric entry. Above my head, the helmet camera synchronized with the pod's systems while the reconnaissance drone secured itself inside its docking compartment. Camera online, the onboard computer announced. Drone linked. Mission recording initiated. I took a slow breath. Recording log. Cadet Mason Reed. Final survival evaluation. Launch time 0600 hours. Equipment check complete. If General Dalton was right, these recordings might one day help someone else survive. That thought stayed with me as the launch cradle lifted toward the orbital carrier waiting above Earth's atmosphere. The acceleration pressed me deep into my seat. Within minutes, Earth disappeared beneath a blanket of clouds. Several dozen drop pods surrounded me in perfect formation, each carrying another graduating cadet toward an unknown destination. Their engines burned steadily against the darkness of space. Everything looked exactly as planned. Until it didn't. A sharp warning tone sounded inside my cockpit. Autopilot override detected. I frowned. Override? The navigation display flickered. For less than a second. Then it returned to normal. Probably a software glitch, I told myself. The formation continued toward the deployment point. One by one, pods launched into hyperspace. Mine followed. The transition lasted only moments. When normal space returned, the stars had changed. An enormous green world filled the forward display. Dense cloud systems wrapped around endless continents covered in forests so dark they looked almost black from orbit. The computer identified the destination. Survival zone. NX-09. I stared at the screen. NX-09? That designation sounded strangely familiar. Before I could think about it, the pod detached from the carrier. Gravity seized hold. The atmosphere struck like a hammer. Flames consumed the exterior as I plummeted toward the surface. The turbulence became violent almost immediately. Warning lights exploded across the cockpit. Crosswinds exceeding tolerance. Navigation failure. Satellite signal lost. The pod spun hard to starboard. I fought the controls, but nothing responded. Outside, lightning illuminated mountains that seemed to rise directly toward me. Then I saw something impossible. Another pod. Far below. It wasn't descending. It was falling. No parachute. No stabilization. It vanished beneath the clouds before I could identify whose it was. A deafening impact shook my own pod. The guidance computer went dark. Every warning light turned red. Primary flight system failure. The pod rolled end over end. Trees rushed upward. Branches smashed against the hull like artillery fire. Metal screamed. Something exploded behind my seat. The world spun so violently I couldn't tell where the sky ended and the ground began. Then everything stopped. Silence. For several seconds I remained strapped into my seat, listening to my own breathing. Blood trickled down the side of my face. Smoke drifted through the cracked cockpit. The emergency hatch refused to open on the first attempt. It finally burst outward with a shower of sparks. Warm, humid air rushed inside. I climbed out slowly and looked around. Endless jungle stretched in every direction. No rescue beacons. No other pods. No radio traffic. Only the distant roar of creatures I couldn't identify. The computer behind me crackled one final time before shutting down forever. Its last message froze on the damaged display. Warning. Authorized drop zone change. Destination. Nox 9. For nearly a minute, I didn't move. Every survival instinct screamed at me to start walking, to find shelter, to establish communications, to do something. Instead, I forced myself to breathe slowly and observe my surroundings. That was the first rule at Fort Horizon. Don't react. Assess. The jungle was alive, not with birds or insects like the forests back on Earth, but with sounds that seemed to come from every direction at once. Deep, rhythmic calls echoed through the trees, followed by distant cracks that were far too heavy to be falling branches. Something enormous moved somewhere beyond the thick wall of vegetation. I activated my helmet camera. Mission log. Mason Reed. Estimated survival time. Unknown. My drop pod has been destroyed. Communications offline. Navigation unavailable. I looked back at the shattered pod. NOX-9. Even saying the name felt unreal. The Council's Deathworld. Whatever had happened, this wasn't a training exercise anymore. I released the reconnaissance drone from my backpack. Its rotors unfolded with a soft mechanical hum before it lifted into the humid air. Scout perimeter. Maximum range. Return immediately if hostile lifeforms detected. The drone disappeared into the canopy. I began searching the wreckage. Most of my supplies had survived. Water purifier, medical kit, emergency rations, field knife, portable scanner, enough equipment to stay alive, assuming the planet allowed it. A sudden alarm sounded in my helmet. The drone was returning. Fast, too fast. It burst through the trees only seconds later, transmitting distorted thermal images. Something massive was following it. I barely had time to crouch behind the twisted remains of the drop pod before the jungle exploded. Branches snapped like dry twigs. Leaves scattered into the air. A creature the size of an armored transport crashed into the clearing. My pulse stopped. The predator stood nearly 3 meters at the shoulder, covered in black scales that shimmered beneath streaks of crimson markings. 4 powerful legs ended in claws capable of tearing through solid rock, while rows of curved teeth filled a jaw that looked powerful enough to crush steel. Then I noticed the blood. Its left side had been ripped open by something even larger. Deep wounds covered its body. One foreleg bent at an unnatural angle. The animal staggered 2 more steps before collapsing only 20 meters away. It wasn't hunting. It was dying. The drone hovered nervously above us. My hand tightened around the survival knife. Every lesson from the Council echoed inside my head. Apex predator. Do not approach. Maintain distance. Retreat immediately. The creature lifted its head. Golden eyes met mine. There was no aggression in them. Only exhaustion. It tried to stand again. Its injured leg failed instantly. The giant predator crashed back onto the ground, releasing a low growl that sounded more like pain than anger. I should have walked away. No instructor would have blamed me. No survival manual would have questioned the decision. Instead, I found myself opening my medical kit. Well, I swallowed. If we both trying to survive this place. I slowly stepped toward the most dangerous creature I had ever seen. Maybe we should help each other. The first step was the hardest. Every instinct told me to keep my distance, but every glance at the creature's wounds reminded me that it wasn't a hunter anymore. It was a survivor, just like me. I knelt slowly, keeping my movements deliberate. The giant beast watched me without blinking, its golden eyes following every motion of my hands. A low growl rumbled deep inside its chest, yet it never tried to attack. Easy, I whispered. I am not here to make things worse. The portable scanner confirmed what I already suspected. Broken foreleg, multiple deep lacerations, severe blood loss. If I did nothing, it wouldn't survive the night. I cut away the damaged scales surrounding the largest wound and sprayed it with disinfectant. The creature jerked violently, its claws digging furrows through the ground only a few feet from my boots. My heart nearly stopped. Still, it held back. Good, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm despite my racing pulse. That means you understand. Working on an alien predator wasn't something Fort Horizon had prepared me for. Bones were positioned differently. Muscle structures overlapped in ways I'd never seen before. I relied on the scanner's medical guidance and simple field experience, cleaning each wound before sealing it with emergency biofoam. The entire process took nearly an hour. When I finally stepped back, sweat soaked my uniform. The creature slowly pushed itself upright. It tested the injured leg once, twice. It still limped, but it could stand. For several long seconds we simply stared at one another. Then something unexpected happened. The enormous predator lowered its head. Not in exhaustion, not in pain. The movement resembled acknowledgement, almost respect. A faint chime interrupted the moment. My drone had completed another reconnaissance sweep. A holographic map appeared inside my visor. Several kilometers east stood a structure unlike anything else in the surrounding jungle. Straight lines, metallic surfaces, artificial energy signatures. Someone had built something here. Before I could study it further, another warning appeared. Unknown transmission detected. The drone isolated fragments of encrypted communications. Subject alive. Unexpected survival. Tracking beacon confirmed. Prepare recovery teams. I frowned. Recovery teams? How did anyone know I was here? My eyes drifted toward the shattered remains of my drop pod. Carefully, I searched the damaged guidance computer until I found a small compartment hidden beneath the primary navigation unit. Inside was a device no Academy equipment should have contained. A military-grade tracking beacon. It hadn't been installed by accident. Someone wanted to know exactly where I landed. My stomach tightened. This wasn't simply a survival examination. I had been sent here. Deliberately, the giant predator limped to my side and looked toward the distant energy source displayed on my visor. It released a low, questioning rumble. I looked at the map, then at the wounded creature. I guess we both looking for answers. The beast gave another quiet growl. I smiled for the first time since crashing. You need a name. After a moment, only one seemed to fit. Titan. The giant predator blinked once. Then, without hesitation, Titan turned toward the jungle path leading east. As if he already knew exactly where we needed to go. Titan led the way through the jungle as though the forest itself had accepted him as one of its own. Despite the injury to his foreleg, he moved with quiet confidence, stopping only when he sensed danger. More than once, he changed direction moments before enormous predators crossed the path we had been following. I had stopped wondering how he knew. On NOx-9, instinct was often more reliable than technology. By sunset, we reached the structure my drone had detected. It wasn't ancient. It was active. Hidden beneath layers of camouflage stood a heavily fortified research complex bearing the unmistakable emblem of NovaCore Industries. My pulse quickened. The corporation had lied to the Galactic Council. They weren't studying NOx-9 from orbit. They were here. I launched the reconnaissance drone and guided it through an open ventilation shaft. The live video appeared inside my visor. What I saw made my blood run cold. Steel cages lined the underground facility. Some contained creatures unlike anything recorded in the Council archives. Others were empty, their reinforced bars twisted outward where desperate animals had tried to escape. Then the camera entered the largest laboratory. Several human drop pods stood inside. Fort Horizon drop pods. My drop pod wasn't the only one redirected. Nearby, frightened cadets wearing Academy uniforms were locked behind energy barriers while scientists monitored surrounding enclosures. One technician laughed. The predators respond faster when the bait is alive. Another checked a console. Subject 27 survived longer than expected. A third nodded toward another holding cell. Prepare the next release. I stared at the screen in disbelief. This had never been a graduation exercise. NovaCore had been kidnapping cadets and abandoning them on NOx-9 to lure the planet's rare apex predators into carefully prepared traps. My fists clenched. Every recording from my helmet camera captured the evidence. Every conversation, every face, every crime. Titan watched me silently. I looked into his golden eyes. Ending this. Night concealed our approach. Titan silently eliminated the outer security beasts that NovaCore had captured for defense, while I slipped through a maintenance entrance the drone had discovered. The facility's security systems had been designed to stop dangerous wildlife. Not one determined human. Within minutes, I reached the detention wing. The first cadet looked at me as though seeing a ghost. Mason, I thought you were dead. Not today. Using emergency cutting tools, I disabled the energy cells one by one. Doors opened. Prisoners ran free. Meanwhile, Titan crashed through the containment sector. The imprisoned creatures erupted into the corridors. Alarms screamed. Scientists fled in panic. Security teams tried to respond, but confusion spread faster than orders could. Before leaving the control room, I copied NovaCore's entire database onto my drone's encrypted storage. Illegal experiments, financial records, mission logs, everything. As explosions echoed throughout the collapsing facility, Titan and I disappeared into the jungle. Behind us, NovaCore's greatest secret burned. Ahead of us, an abandoned orbital communications tower rose above the forest canopy. It was our only chance to show the galaxy the truth. Several years later, I returned to the Galactic Council Nexus. The chamber looked exactly as it had on the day I first arrived as an unnoticed cadet. The crystal walls still reflected distant stars. Representatives of hundreds of civilizations still filled the Great Hall. But everything else had changed. NovaCore Industries no longer existed. Its executives had been convicted across the galaxy, and every record of their crimes had become mandatory study material for military academies and scientific institutes alike. NOx-9 had become the galaxy's first protected Deathworld preserve. The research station built there carried no weapons, only laboratories, only explorers, only respect. Titan still ruled the forests, exactly where he belonged. When the ceremony began, the oldest representative of the Eldari Assembly slowly rose from his seat. The entire chamber fell silent. For generations, he said, we believed Deathworlds created nothing but monsters. His eyes met mine. One human proved us wrong. He returned not with trophies, not with tales of conquest, but with truth, with friendship, and with undeniable evidence that understanding is stronger than domination. He looked across the gathered delegates. That was the day we realized humanity's greatest strength is not conquering the unknown. It is finding allies within it. No one applauded. No one needed to. As I left the council and looked through the great crystal windows toward the stars, I thought about the first moment I had stepped onto NOx-9. I had believed I was being tested. I was wrong. The planet had never tested my strength. It had tested my humanity. Somewhere beneath its endless emerald canopy, Titan still walked free, untouched by fear or greed. And whenever someone asks me what I found on the galaxy's deadliest world, I always give the same answer. Not a monster, a friend.